Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel, Tomcat Stitchery. I'm Whitney and I am here today with another Sunday sew along, but today is a tutorial. We're in between sew alongs. We just finished up the Ziggy jacket by Style Arc and next week we start the Itch to Stitch Upland trousers. They're phenomenal. Very excited about that one. But today I am here to show you my newest creation. This is the Pattern Emporium Wanderlust dress. I've made this before, but I wanted to make it again in this gorgeous cotton interlock that I got from Stashify. So unfortunately you can't get any more of it, but I was recreating this dress that I had, God, I can't remember now where I grabbed this one. J. Crew, I think it was J. Crew. Grabbed this dress. I just loved it. It looks so casual to wear with tennis shoes and all that kind of stuff, and really wanted to make it up for my spring capsule, of which this purple is one of my colors. Now this is a little bit more white than what I'm working with the everything else. Everything else is kind of cream, but it totally works. Loving it with my white tennis shoes. It's really good. But for today's video, I wanted to show you how I cut out stripes. So this is a dress. It's cut on the fold, center front on the fold, and then on the back, but it's got a flared skirt. So it comes out. It's not maybe a half circle, maybe a quarter circle. And then on the back, it's got beautiful shaping in the back. I love this pattern, but I had to match my stripes up. Can you see that? I had to match my, I'm bigger than Lena, sorry. I had to match my stripes up in center back because there's some gorgeous shaping in the back, so I wanted to keep that seam allowance. And then also, because it's a flare, your stripes do go chevron at the side seam, but I mean, that is pretty wonderful. If I do say so myself. Both side seams ended up that way, which is very exciting. And then I showed you how I cut out my neckband to make it lie flat, and how I cut out my sleeves to make my sleeves match up at that seam line too. Can you see that? Is that reading well on camera? So that is what I'm showing you today. Really, when it comes to stripes, once you've got everything cut out, it's just kind of like you're good. But it's all about the cutting out that, yeah, that does the biggest thing with stripe matching. So hopefully this will give you some encouragement and some courage to go ahead and make your own striped garments and not be too scared about matching across seams. All right, before we go to the cutting table, I'm gonna show you me in the dress because I'm very excited about this new dress. I'll tell you what sizes I made. I made the size 14. I did do a full bust adjustment. I added 3 inches across the front, and I did the full bust adjustment by her method that she uses in the pattern. It was just something different, and I really liked the way it turned out. So I did use her method. I sewed the short sleeves, obviously, the midi length, and she has a short midi length for people that are short, which I totally appreciate. She has a short average tall when it comes to the midi. I think it's just the midi length, and then there's a maxi length as well. This pattern also has a 3/4 length sleeve and a full length sleeve. There may be more sleeves. And then as far as the neckline, there's a scoop neckline, which my other one I made was the deep scoop. And it's a little, I really love it, but it sometimes, like if I'm at church, for instance, I feel like it's a little too cleavage-tastic. So I did the higher neck on this one. And then there's also a crew neck that's even higher. But I did go to the one in between the scoop and the crew. I'll probably never make the crew neck, but I think this is a good one for every day because it's supposed to be a nice casual dress, something to wear with sneakers and that sort of thing. What else? I didn't touch the length. I didn't do any lengthening or shortening because I used the short midi. And yeah, I think everything worked out well. Again, there's gorgeous shaping in the back of this dress. This is my second time making it. I just really love this pattern. I think it's very, very flattering. Oh, and I take that back. I did shorten the bodice. I take that back. I shortened the bodice by 1 inch to raise the waistline up 1 inch. I forgot about that. So that everything hits me just right. And she walks you through that too in the pattern on the difference that can make for this to hit at your waist so that it's not clinging unflatteringly at like your lower belly area because just the waist needs to be raised. And it worked a charm. I often have to raise the waist 1 inch anyway. I have a very high short waist, so that has to happen a lot. But there you have it. This is my Wanderlust. I will now take you over to the cutting table to show you how I cut out my stripes. As always, if you have any questions, leave them down below and I'll answer those as soon as possible. All right, guys, I hope you have a wonderful Sunday and I will see you next time. Bye. Okay, today I'm cutting out my Wanderlust dress, and I'm going to show you how I do that with striped fabric. This will work with any kind of striped fabric, but before I put the pattern pieces and stuff on here, and hopefully everything is in, I think everything's in frame. I don't really, you know, my tripod only gets so high, so, and this is kind of a long dress. Number one, not all striped fabric is created equal. Now this can be woven, knits, whatever. A lot of times with knits, especially with like bigger prints, floral prints, that sort of thing, they are printed on the fabric. So the knit fabric is, you know, white, for instance, and then it has the pattern printed on top of it, which is fine with larger prints and that sort of thing. With stripes, and subsequently like polka dots, although polka dots are typically printed on as well, if the fabric goes into the machine, the printing machine, just a little off kilter, your stripes are going to be off grain, and that is going to drive you nuts. And you pretty much always have to compromise and give where you wouldn't necessarily want to give in order for that to happen. So it's, you know, sometimes it's harder to tell online if stripes are knitted in or not, but the way you can tell if you're shopping in person is if the pattern is the same on both sides. If it's printed on, it's going to be just white or a certain color on the back, and you'll see like a much fainter you know, shadow of the print on the top. That's how you know it's printed on. Stripes have been knitted in, and so you know that they're on grain. So that's just a little side note. This has been knitted in. This fabric is lovely. I got this off to Stashify, and it is just really lovely. Okay, so for the most part with pattern matching period, anything that goes in a stripe, it doesn't have to necessarily be a stripe. A polka dot pattern usually runs like in a stripe. Plaids, obviously. The general rule of thumb is that you want to cut out single thickness. So you cut out, you know, one front and then you flip it and cut out the other, but you're only cutting out one thickness. That being said, with a knitted on stripe, and if my stripe was not knitted on, if it were printed on, I would cut it out that way. But this is a knitted on stripe, and so I can get away with cutting it on the fold. And the way that I do that to make sure that everything is nice on grain is that I pick a stripe and I'm just going to follow it across the pattern. And I keep the underneath fabric kind of where, I didn't need to fold it that far, kind of where I, hold on, I didn't need to fold it that far, getting a little crazy. Let's determine how far I really want to go with this. Okay, so I just want to make sure that that is in fact the same stripe. It is. Just following that with my eye. I went too far again. So we're matching up our stripes, and we want to make sure that those are staying kind of nice on grain. Okay, so this stripe lines up, and then the subsequent stripes will go either way. And I think if this was cut, and this was cut pretty much straight across this white stripe, a little bit of the purple kind of comes up above, but it's pretty close. There you go. All right, so I'm just going to quickly even this out all the way down. Folding up the excess because I don't want it pulling on anything, but I do see that it's gone off there. Also with knit fabrics, you can, sometimes the selvages can be just really knitted tightly, and they can pull up the fabric at the selvage edge. If that's the case, just cut your selvages off. Okay, so generally we're pretty good here. All right, so that is the first part, the importance of stripe matching. Is making sure everything's on grain and you don't have like it off grain and then you've got a crazy stripe anyway. Okay, next we're gonna pick up your front or your back. I'm gonna do my front. Sorry, I stepped away from the camera there. You probably had a hard time hearing me. So this pattern, it uses the same skirt for the front and the back, so it has you just overlapping. And there's an option for doing a center front seam, so I will set that accordingly. Okay, so what I'm going to do, and is this the front? Yeah, this is the front. Okay, I'm just going to set my front. Make sure you can see my front. Okay, you can see most of it. All right. So there's some things to consider. Basically, what we're doing is just, and stripes are a pretty easy point. You want to, we're not necessarily going to match our underarms, but we do want to match our bottom hems. And the reason for this is that if you have any kind of bust shaping, and this isn't the case for everything, if you have any kind of bust shaping, your front piece is going to be longer than your back piece at the side seam because you need a little bit, you pull the back to kind of stretch to fit the front. Same thing if you have a dart, if you're using a woven and you've got a dart, that dart intake is going to mess up your pattern matching. It's going to be impossible to match up to the back. So my goal is always to match from the hem to the bust point. Because also, once you get underneath your arm where your bust point is, it's under your arm and no one is looking at that at all. So you are never going to be able to match up all the way from hem to underarm unless you're sewing something with a completely straight side seam, something really boxy where your front and your back have equal lengths. So keep that in mind if there is bust shaping. So what I'm going to do, kind of just do what you want here. Okay, so I'm just going to put some weights here. Sorry, I know I'm out of frame at the top of that front. All right, so now I'm just going to match up, and again, I don't want to use the seam, so I'm just going to do this. Okay. So now this is all good. I'm going to take a note that over here at the bottom of my hem, it is at the bottom of a purple stripe. So when I cut out my back, I want to make sure that at my side seam that it also is at the bottom of a purple stripe. Got paper folded up there. Now, I also want to point out, this is a flared skirt, maybe a half circle. When all is said and done, your stripes are going to go crazy at the side seam because it goes on the bias, and that's just the nature of what we're doing here. Also, don't worry if your center front and center back aren't at the same point. You know, my center front here is at the bottom of a purple stripe because, especially if you've got any shaping where you've got extra length in the front, your front is going to be longer than your back at center front anyway. It's the side seams. The side seams are where we want to focus. All right. Now we're also going to take note here before I cut anything out, because I'm going to cut my sleeve out next, and I'm making a short sleeve. But I'm going to take note that my notch here is about, if I were smart, I would have lined this up better to make it a little easier, but it's about 1/8 of an inch above the bottom of a purple line. So I'm going to do that with my sleeve. I'm going to put my bottom, or my little notch here, about 1/8 of an inch above the bottom of that purple. I'm going to get everything on grain here. It is not. Okay, now it is. Scoot it down just a hair. So we're just focusing on the front. And again, I'm making a short sleeved for this version. could have gone up further, but it's okay. Okay, so my single notch here, and I'll make sure you can see that. I think you can. All right, so my single notch here is about 1/8 of an inch above that purple line. I'm also going to take note, and that matches up here with my front. I'm also going to take note, though, where my back notch is, because I want that to match on the back piece. So my back notch, this bottom little notch here is like right at the bottom of a purple, and then this one, the second one, obviously, is up into the purple. So those are the two things we need to make note. Back of the sleeve, my notches need to be right at the bottom of a purple and into the purple, and then my side seam of my back needs to be at the bottom of a purple. Now, when you get up into the more of the curve, you're kind of one-to-one here in this part of the sleeve, but this a lot of times has easing in it. Not as much with knit patterns a lot of times, but definitely with wovens, you're going to have your ease, and so things are not going to match as they get up into the top of the sleeve, and that's okay. You've got ease in that sleeve cap. You need it for movement, and it's not going to match perfectly as it goes up and around the sleeve. So it's okay. Things just can't be perfectly matched. All right, so I'm going to really quickly cut these pieces out, and then I'll meet you right back here to do the back. Okay, so now I have my back laid out, and I totally forgot that the back does get cut with the center back seam because there's shaping in the back, which is one of the reasons I love this dress so much. I just totally spaced that part. So this seam line here, you match in the front, you match this line up with the fold, and then the front is on the fold. And then on the back, you match up the seam line here. There's a 1/4 inch seam allowance on this pattern. Okay, so that being said, you can see that I've got my bottom here matched up with the bottom of a purple. Now, my double notch here does not match up with the bottom of a purple and into the purple, because typically on patterns, you have your notches a little closer into the curve of the armhole where it's more one-to-one here. I've also done a full bust adjustment in a little bit different way that they suggest on this one, which is why there's extra paper here. But typically your double notches would be down here in this vicinity somewhere. The notches on this pattern are up where your easing occurs. So I'm really not going to worry about that at all. In fact, if I take my sleeve here, let me find my double notch. So my double notches are at the bottom and into the body there. They've shifted a little bit. There we go. If we were matching, that's going to match really pretty nicely through that area. So we're just going to leave that as is, and I think that's going to be good. Okay. That being said, if you do have your notches down here in the curve, you can easily match them up where your sleeve matched up. Okay, so the other part of this is that I'm going to have to, I've got everything laid out where I can see the underside. I've got a little bit of a gap up there so I can make sure all of my lines are on grain, all my stripes, because I'm going to be matching all the way across this center back seam, having to match stripes across that, which is a little unfortunate, but I do love the shaping in this. So now I'm going to cut out. Actually, center back is also at the bottom of a purple. I think that was the case with the front. It's not always the case. I'm going to move that out of the way. So I'm going to show you a trick on the neckband. Okay. I am doing the scoop to my neck. When I do that, it leaves a perforated edge. Real quick, going to mark my center back. Oh wait, I don't have to. There's a seam. Hello. Mark my notches. and then cut out my sides. All right, so there we go. And look, if I tip this up, you can see that those stripes are perfect all the way across. And I have these right sides together, so I could literally just take this to the serger very carefully and do those together. All right, let me show you the neckband, and then I'm just going to show you a little trick when sewing. Really, though, with stripe matching, you've won the battle once you have everything cut out. So, you know, keep that in mind. Move my pattern pieces. Okay, with stripes in particular in your neckband, let me carefully move this. This is such a really good pattern. It is a bit of a fabric waster. Like I have these really big scraps, but I'll put those aside and I'm sure they'll come in handy for something. Okay, so we've got our stripe here. And when I put my neckband here, because it does need to be able to stretch to go around that neckband, I notice it's literally the width of from purple stripe to purple stripe. So I'm not even going to use my pattern piece because I want this to really be on grain. I'm going to use the pattern piece. Well, let's cut. And then I'm going to use the pattern piece just to know where to end it. But also, it's good to remember that your neckband, especially if you're doing something with a square neckband, that those stripes are going to turn around the neckband. Now doing one with the stripes this way, just make sure I get my length here. You're basically, it's going to look like a solid color with just a little bit of purple showing. So it's going to be like, well, it's a 1/4 inch seam allowance. So it'll be like half. Yeah, and then it'll fold. It'll be like half white, half purple, which will be actually very satisfying. I am going to go ahead and cut my center notches, make that easier to install. Okay, so when I am sewing all of this in, again, the hard work is done now. Once it's been cut out, you're pretty good to go. But when I am sewing, I am literally matching my stripes, like going in between, making sure, you know, looking back. So I do go much slower when I'm sewing with those stripes, just to make sure everything is really lining up nicely. The skinnier the stripe, the less you have to get things perfect. Obviously with this one, I'm going to have to take some special care, but yeah, it's not hard. I really recommend you just go and try and yeah, and learn from that way as well. All right, guys, let me know if you have any questions down below. Next week, we start our Upland Trouser Sew Along. It's very exciting. I'm wearing them right now. All right, I'll see you guys next time.